Thank you, Cathaoirleach, and I just want to thank everyone here today. And I think, we do understand the importance of this particular database, and it is so important. And when I, was reading, we were talking about the results of the census 2022 is expected to commence in May, and that you are committed to producing a wide range of statistical tables generated from the data on disabilities. But you're also saying that over 50 detailed tables relating to the disability were produced from census 2016, and at least this number will be produced from census 2022. So maybe you could explain that to me. The other concern I have is that we are now speaking about 2027. Do you feel that there was enough meaningful engagement with the different groups and different agencies? I have a concern over that. And the reason we're speaking about 2027 is you're saying that you have already had held meetings with organisations and representing people with a disability, and these will continue. Where my biggest concern is you're saying that this will be an online response option as well as paper option. Now, a lot of things are gone online now, so maybe, we need to have more. You speak about a website here will also be designed. So I just feel that we've just gone through a census, and which is so important, and information is crucial for a person with a disability. I think, have we failed there with that we are now saying, while I welcome that we're speaking about 2027 census, and you're speaking about online and you're speaking about websites, has there been maybe areas that we have failed on, and where do we feel, again, as previous speakers have said, huge issues with communication, and that is what we need to make sure. And I know, when we speak about the disability segregated, that the data has to be. I mean, that to me is vitally important. But I just feel from reading, and I do want to welcome everyone's, opening statements and whatever, but I just feel that, we need to do more. I think there is a barrier there, and I see it myself daily, and we see it here in our committee where we speak to people with a disability, whether it's accessing housing, as other speakers said, whether it's accessing services, whether even resources. So I just feel this is important, and it worries me now that while you're still bringing out 2022, we're now moving to 2027. So maybe you could come back to me on that. And look, I think all of us here, and I think it's important to say that we're all here working as, for the good of everyone, and to make sure that data is there, that it is accessible, but also, and I do welcome when you spoke earlier on that the wording had been changed in this census because there had been different, you said that was a little bit of a barrier. But I just think, and it's one thing I've learned, and I've learned from this committee, when you're working with the groups and the organisations that are in an area that of a field of their own, they know exactly, I think, how we can do this best. And I think one thing we've learned is we always have to listen to the people that need to, that we can make sure that we look after them. So thank you very much. That's my two questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Cormac.
Thank you, Chair. So just in response to Deputy O'Connor's question there around the 50 tables. So those 50 tables were in the dedicated thematic release relating to disability from 2016. There was actually more like across the board, the full suite of tables produced from 2016, closer to 90 tables, I think, where the disability variable was included. So what those tables I'm referring to effectively do is they cross-tabulate people with disabilities, the various categories of disability that appeared on the census form in 2016 with other key variables in the census form. So, for example, general health, economic status, social class, socioeconomic group, geography as well, so they'd be disaggregated down to county level, to electoral division level, and down to small area level. So it's really about, bringing out the various different characteristics of persons who reported on the census form that they had a disability, and locating where they are in the country. So I mean that's the essence of census data. For just jumping forward to 2027, I mean we're open to including any different cross-tabulation that users or people might want to include. The only real limits we have on producing census tables is making sure that we don't disclose information about persons on an individual level. That goes across the board. That's possibly the key tenet of census taking. But subject to that constraint, we can cross-tabulate the disability data with any other data on the census form and produce it to the lowest level of geography possible, which allows that disaggregation that's so important to users. Looking forward to 2027, so we said yes, it is going online. I would stress that it's early in the development of 2027 at this stage. Why are we talking about 2027? That's unfortunately the way census works. It's a kind of unusual project in that it's got an immutable deadline. The census will take place in April 2027. That cannot be changed, and that brings its own dynamics in terms of working backwards when certain things have to be achieved. So, for example, we have to have all our IT systems ready in 2026. That can't change. If that doesn't happen, the census won't take place in 2027. So that means that you have to start preparing for the next census before the current census has been disseminated. If we waited until the dissemination programme for this census was over, we wouldn't be able to have a census in 2027, particularly because it's going online, which is bringing huge technical challenges around data security, storage, and so on. So, you know, we have to start preparing, and we have to start preparing the questions as well. We intend to hold a census pilot next year in September, which will test the new questions or any revisions to existing questions that will be included in 2027 to make sure that they're comprehended by the public, to make sure that they deliver accessible and good quality data. So that's why we have to start the consultation now, so we can form a census advisory group, that they can give us recommendations, that we can form those subgroups. So I take Nem's point that, you know, that there is, you know, it mightn't have suited every group. We've had 400 submissions from hundreds of different organisations across the board in the census, and I'd say it's probably difficult to suit everybody, but we can probably work offline with NEM to see if we can accommodate additional submissions from the DPO relating to the disability question. We don't want to be exclusive. We want to include everybody to the greatest extent that we can. So the comment I made in my opening statement about the organisations that we worked with, that was for a kind of a pilot test, a very early pilot test of going online. It was very limited. We will do much more testing as we go, and accessibility is a very, very key consideration for us. So we will continue to work with those organisations that we've worked with to date and expand that to other organisations that are relevant. You know, a key facet of the census is coverage. You know, we know that the fewer people complete the census, the less valuable it is. We want to be as universal and accessible as we can. There have been challenges in the past. Part of that's been related to the paper form. We know that people have had difficulties with completing the form. We're hoping going online will alleviate some of those difficulties, but, you know, we will still have the same level of support that we had, and hopefully enhance it going forward, particularly with the focus on the website to make it as accessible as possible. You know, it's in the CSO's interest to be able to say that we got to 100% of the population and not exclude anybody. If we exclude groups, it casts doubt on the data. So we'll certainly strive to the greatest extent possible. You know, there's lots of international experience with other countries, particularly English-speaking countries who've gone online with their census. We've got close relations with all those countries, and we'll continue to liaise with them to bring best practice to the greatest extent possible to make the census 2027 accessible.
Yeah, thank you. Just to come in on that, I want to welcome that, because I think from listening to our speakers this morning, communication with all the different groups, everybody here involved, is going to be critical. We have the few years now to get it right, and I think we have to have it right this time, that no one feels that they couldn't access it, or they couldn't understand it, or that they were left out. And that's why this meeting this morning is so important now, that we do it right the next time. If we have made mistakes this time, that we make sure we don't do them the next time. But thank you for that. I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. Jackie?
Thank you very much, Senator, for asking those questions, and really welcome your comments, Cormac, and that's very helpful for the GPO network. Could I urge a couple of things immediately off the top of my head in reply to your amenability to being open to a submission from the GPO network, of which each, don't forget, an alliance of 5 national GPO groupings, and I think which would be far richer and more valuable would be, if you, as all possible, if you could organise something like a morning or an afternoon face-to-face consultation with the GPO network. We would find that much more engaging, much more enriching. You would have to organise Irish Sign Language interpretation, and on that note, in terms of communication, when you're talking about going online, have you considered and even thought about your ISL video? How are deaf people who use sign language as their first language, how are they going to access and participate in the online census? So they're the kinds, that's just another example to add to the examples that Nem gave around accessibility to the census, apart from the questions to be asked. But the DPO network would absolutely welcome the opportunity, but our preference would be bearing in mind the various needs and issues and ideas we have to contribute. Face-to-face would be far more valuable for us. Thank you.
Thank you.